Yeah, and for more insight, let's bring in former CIA Covert Operations Officer Mike Baker. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Certainly, we're dissecting this information as it's coming in, and we're waiting on German officials to come out and say whether or not this was an accident or whether or not this was an act of terror. But certainly, with our own Jillian, who worked at the National Security Council for years, it appears like there is an uptick of chatter. And I'm curious as to sort of what's going on behind the scenes and what your sources are saying.
Yeah, well, look, it's typical for the German law enforcement, for the government there, and for others here in the EU to take their time in deciding, when they pull that trigger and say it's a terrorist incident. So that's not a surprise that they're doing this. But look, this latest incident, it's the one-year anniversary of the similar attack that took place in Stockholm that was perpetrated by Uzbek refugee who had his status denied. And, of course, we've had similar methodology used. Berlin Christmas market a little over a year ago, the incident in Nice. So the methodology, the timing, it all points to a terrorist attack. But, again, it's understandable. They're going to take their time to decide what's happening. Again, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I don't think there's any doubt, really, at this point, what it is.
When we talk about intelligence sharing at this point, because you made the reference to the attack a year ago in Stockholm, and we had Waleed Phares on the show earlier, and he said, listen, this has been a 2-year really trend and uptick in using vehicles and vans as weapons. So what is going on right now between these intelligence agencies as they're sharing information to quickly dissect what took place and if there are possibly perpetrators who fled the scene?
Right. Well, the police are saying they don't believe there was anybody else involved at this point, as of minutes ago. So I don't know that there's any other effort out there going on right now. But what they are doing is obviously, and they've already done this. Frankly, they're just holding the information. They've basically peeled away all the layers of the perpetrator, of the individual who killed himself at the end of this attack. There's a great deal of intelligence sharing that goes on, as you pointed out, but there was nothing specific leading up to today's incident that pointed to the sort of specificity that would say today we've got to raise the alert, or this week we have to raise the alert. So yes, there's talk about this increased chatter, but just that of and by itself oftentimes isn't going to give you much other than this uncomfortable feeling that you've got something and you don't know where. You don't know what location. So it's important to understand that, we're seeing some more communication, or an increased amount of communication. But it's also important for people to understand that that doesn't mean that you're pinpointing a specific time and target location. But right now what's going on is look, the Germans, unfortunately, are very well versed in how to do these post-op reviews and all the forensic work that goes on to it. We have offered our support both from the intel community and the FBI, as have the Brits, who are extremely good at this sort of thing. So, EU comes together in incidents like this. There's been a lot of talk, of course, about, disparate views and Brexit and all the rest of it. But when you have an incident like this, that's when you see the intel and law enforcement communities over here in this part of the world really come together and work.
All right, Mike Baker, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, the story is very fresh. Authorities are working hard behind the scenes, and we're trying to work hard to get the information out to the people. So thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.